chapel of a small church in Rome, there is a Baroque sculpture of a nun. She is lying back, lifted off the ground, her body gone limp. Her head has fallen to one side, her eyes half closed, her mouth open. Above her stands a smiling angel, holding a golden arrow, about to bring it down into her chest. The work is called the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. It was carved by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, completed in 1652, and it is widely considered the most controversial sculpture ever placed inside a Catholic church. The church commissioned it as a sacred image, a saint receiving the love of God. It has stood there for nearly 400 years, and for nearly 400 years people have walked in, looked up at her face, and felt that something is wrong, that what they're seeing is not holy at all, that it's something deeply, unmistakably human, and that it doesn't belong in a church. Bernini was the most devout artist of his age. He almost certainly meant it as worship. So why can't anyone agree on what they're looking at? Act 1. The vision. Teresa of Avila was a Spanish nun in the 1500s, a reformer, a mystic, and eventually a saint. She founded the Descalced Carmelites, a reformed branch of the Carmelite order, and she wrote an autobiography known as The Life of Teresa of Jesus, describing a vision that came to her again and again. An angel appeared beside her, holding a long golden spear tipped with fire, and the angel drove it into her heart, repeatedly. She wrote that it pierced her to the core, and that when the angel withdrew it, she felt as though her insides were being pulled out with it. Theologians would later give this experience a name: transverberation, the piercing of the soul by divine love. It is a specific phenomenon in Catholic mysticism, distinct from ordinary prayer or vision. But here is the part that matters. Teresa wrote that the pain was so severe it made her moan, and yet the sweetness of it was so excessive that she never wanted it to end. A pain, she said, that was spiritual, not bodily, though the body, she admitted, had a share in it, even a large share, a pain you never want to end. The body has a share in it, even a large share. That is what the sculptor had to carve. Act 2. The impossible marble. Bernini was working between 1647 and 1652. By then, the most celebrated artist in Rome, the man popes called on when they needed the impossible made real. He had served Pope Urban VIII for decades, becoming the defining voice of high Roman Baroque art. This commission came through a private patron, but it carried the full weight of that tradition behind it. And on a purely technical level, the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa is one of the most impossible things ever carved. Look at what stone is asked to do. It becomes a body with no bones in it. Teresa isn't standing or sitting, but collapsing, suspended in a swoon. It becomes cloth, yards of heavy robe falling in churning folds that seem to writhe along with her. It becomes a slack, lifeless hand hanging in the air, and it becomes a cloud, the whole group floating, lit from above. One material, white Carrara marble, pretending to be flesh and fabric and vapor and light all at once. Your eye accepts it before your mind can object, which is exactly the problem with the face. Act 3. The fork. The face is the reason this statue has never been at peace. Her head is thrown back, her eyes are nearly shut, her lips are parted, and the expression Bernini gave her, a saint in a church receiving God, is one that countless visitors over 4 centuries have read as something else entirely. The objection is old. In the 1700s, a French writer named Charles de Brosses stood before it and said that if this was divine love, he was well acquainted with it. He meant it was not divine love at all. He was not the last. The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa is regularly called the most sensual object ever placed inside a Catholic church. So here is the fork, and it's a real one, because you can't settle it by looking anything up. On one side, Bernini was deeply religious. Teresa herself called the experience spiritual. The church accepted the work and kept it. By this reading, the discomfort you feel is your own, a modern inability to imagine spiritual joy without sexualizing it. On the other side, trust your eyes. Bernini was a master who controlled every millimeter of expression. He knew exactly what that face would say. By this reading, he carved human ecstasy and called it holy. The unsettling possibility is that both are true, that Bernini understood the language of spiritual rapture and the language of the body are the same language, and used it on purpose. This was, in fact, the project of the Counter-Reformation, to make faith felt in the body, not just reasoned in the mind. The Council of Trent had called on artists to move people, to overwhelm them, to make the divine viscerally real. Bernini may have done exactly what he was asked. Act 4. The theatre. There's one more thing, and most people who see photographs of the statue never learn it, because they only ever see the statue. Bernini didn't carve a sculpture, he built a room. The Ecstasy sits inside the Cornaro Chapel in Santa Maria della Vittoria, designed as a single-staged event. What Bernini called his bel composto, the beautiful whole, painting, sculpture and architecture fused into one unified experience. Above Teresa, hidden from view, is a concealed window. The light falling on her is real daylight, channeled down across a fan of gilded bronze rays so she appears lit from heaven itself. Theatrical lighting, built into the architecture, centuries before a spotlight existed. And on the two side walls, Bernini carved an audience. Members of the Cornaro family, the chapel was commissioned by Federico Cornaro, a Venetian cardinal, sculpted sitting in what look unmistakably like private theatre boxes. They lean out. They watch her ecstasy unfold, like spectators at a performance. So is this a sacred altarpiece, or a piece of theatre, with a built-in audience and stage lighting, turning a private spiritual experience into a public spectacle? Bernini never said. He took whatever he intended to his grave in 1680. So you stand in that chapel looking up, asked to decide. The church says holy, its critics say scandalous. The artist who could have settled it stayed silent for the rest of his life and is now nearly 3.5 centuries dead. Look at her and find a soul touched by God, and the statue is a miracle of faith. Look at her and find a human being, and it becomes something the church has been quietly explaining away for 400 years. Both readings have stood in that chapel the whole time, side by side, neither one winning. The marble isn't going to tell you which is right. It never has.